What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Fandoms Anonymous. This is a special episode because I have comic extraordinaire Mr. Brian Denham on here with us. What's going on, Brian?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. How about you? How's everything going in your neck of the woods?
Oh, we're just busy putting out some amazing comic books, you know. You know how it goes.
That's the way of life. The question that is always asked, and a lot of comic book writers and editors and producers probably get tired of this redundant question, but the reason I like to ask it is because everybody's story is different. What got you into wanting to do comics?
Oh man, when I was a little kid, it starts when I was like 5 years old. My brothers I went into one of their rooms and they had a drawer full of comic books. I'd opened it. I never opened this thing before. I was like, oh my gosh, like what are these, you know? And this was like 1974 or 5, you know? But I was just blown away by all these comic books. And one of my brothers, he said, he's like, oh, they're comic books and people draw them and write them and color them and, you know, and then they color them with little dots, you know. He thought all the half-tone dots were like they were like hand done. And I was like, well, I'm going to do that when I grow up. And right then that was it. I was committed. I just kept focusing on making comics and even I didn't ever want to get kicked out of comics, so I learned how to like do every step of them, you know, letter and write and color and everything. So I was like, there's nobody going to tell me I can't make comic books, you know. So
you wanted to make sure you had all the tools of the trade, because you know the way the things go in today's world is, well, if you can't do this task of the job anymore, since we've advanced, we're going to have to move you on out the way.
Oh, yeah.
Like, nah, not me. I know how to draw those dots, so
you're not that's right. I can stencil those dots all day long if that's what it takes.
You're not going to get me. I have that task.
That's exactly it.
It's on my LinkedIn, dot drawer.
Dot matrix, that's my name.
So you got into comics, and I know you've worked extensively with different companies. How did you get your first gig?
I used to go around I'm from Dallas mostly, and I used to go around the Dallas Fantasy Fair, which is a big convention back in the day, and in the 80s and 90s. And I'd show my artwork to different editors and stuff, and they'd give me tips. And Kerry Gamble, this big-time Marvel guy, he was from Dallas, and I would show him at conventions every 6 months or so. Every time they had a convention, he'd always show up, and I'd bring my portfolio and show him. And John Cassaday from the X-Men, that's how he got broke into. Was like, you know, Kerry was teaching him some stuff, you know. But so this went on for a few years, like from when I was, oh my gosh, like 14 to, you know, 18. And I had some interest from a couple of Marvel editors, and they even would hand out their numbers, and I could call them in New York and talk to them there on the phone. But I wasn't getting any traction, and I don't know, I was like 18, and I was like, oh, I can't wait any longer, you know. I thought this was going to happen immediately.
Right.
So I joined the Marines. I was like, I'm done. And, you know, I got to develop my skills, you know. And so I kept focusing on that while I was in the Marines. When I got out of the Marines, me and a buddy that I joined with, he had some money from his mom dying, or his grandma dying. And we published a self-published comic book. And from there, I worked a couple of years at a comic book store and kept trying and to make my own comic book that I published in '94 called My Name is Mud. And I worked at a comic book store in Fort Worth called Heroes, and we were part of the Jim Lee Killer Instinct tour, you know, with Mark Silvestri. That was a big thing back in '94. It was huge. And so Jim Lee's bus came through, and Mark Silvestri went to a different city. But we had Jim Lee, and I worked the store all day long. And at the end of the day, the manager of the store let me meet Jim Lee. And so I showed him my portfolio and, you know, my pages I was working on for this My Name is Mud comic book. And he's, you know, gave me some really great criticism, you know. But he's like, you are right there, you know. He's like, about 6 more months of practice, you could break in. I was like, that's the best thing I've heard, you know.
Right.
And I was like, all right, I'm going to do it, you know. And he gave me tons of stuff to focus on too. So 6 more months, I published that My Name is Mud self-published it and got it through Diamond and stuff. And then I met Dan Frega at the Dallas Fantasy Fair in '94, and he liked my stuff, and we talked. And he's like, "Let me introduce you to Rob." Rob Liefeld was there. I was like, "What? No way!" And so he walked me over to Rob's table, and Rob had just gotten done with this, like a million people in his line. It was crazy. And but he was still full of energy, and Dan Frege introduced him to me, or us together. And so I showed him the book, and he liked it. But we just talked for a few minutes, and that was it. One of the other guys, because when I would go to these conventions, like Todd Knock and Jaime Mendoza, big inker, and Todd's a big artist. They were at the shows too, and they were always, we were always in portfolio lines together. Sometimes you would just meet up or whatever. It was like all the local guys knew each other while we were getting reviewed by editors. But Jaime had interest from Rob, and I did too. But I saw Rob again the next week at San Diego Comic-Con, and Dan had introduced me to him again. So he didn't need any introduction. Rob remembers everything, He's like, "Hey, you're that, my name is Mud Guy from Dallas, right?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You want a job?" I was like, "Yes." I mean, I couldn't breathe. I was trying to play it cool, but there was no cool there. I was just like, yeah, I'd like a job, yeah. And he's like, "All right, show up on Monday at my office in Orange County, near Los Angeles, and I'll put you to work." I was like, "Okay." I could not breathe, man. I was just like, I was like, "Okay." So I like walked off, and everybody was like congratulating me from Extreme Studios and all this stuff. I had like $20 in my pocket, and I was like, I got nowhere to stay, nowhere to live, nothing. And Matt Hawkins, who was the president of Top Cow now, but he was Rob's like right hand man back in the day. He was like, "We're gonna put you up. We're gonna, don't worry about nothing. We will take care of you." And so he talked it over with Todd Knock that I would stay at Todd's place. And, Todd's like, "You can stay with me, but you got 10 days to make enough money to get out of here and get your own place."
Right.
I was like, "Okay." And Rob paid every Friday. So whatever you did that week, you turned in a voucher in the morning, you get paid at the end of the day, which was amazing, And because it's like, what was I working at a comic book store, for a few months before? And then it's like, every day we will pay you, just, Friday, he just hit it. So I got on one of the trains that would take you up, like Amtrak, and took me up to Orange County with Todd and stuff. And I went home with Todd. We watched MST 3K all night, and then came back the next morning, because Todd's thing was, I will get there in the morning before Rob Liefeld gets there, and I will leave after Rob Liefeld leaves, And so we would show up early in the morning and stay until midnight, because Rob was like always there, And Todd was like, "I will never let Rob leave before." Todd would not leave before Rob left. He was so focused on his work. And I just went, and Rob was like, just do pinups, just pinups of all my characters, And the first day I did, I won a Bad Rock. He asked me to show some pictures of Bad Rock. So I did like 4 sketches, and he's like, "Do that one," And I turned it into a double-page spread, and I got it right there. Rob liked it, and had one of the guys ink it, and one of the guys color it, and 10 days later it was published on a Wednesday. It came out that following Wednesday at the comic book stores in Youngblood Battlezone #2, and that was the most impressive thing I think I've ever seen, is like how fast that turnaround time was back in the day. It's like, I drew it on a Monday, colored it on a Tuesday, or inked it on Tuesday, colored it on Wednesday, sent it to the printer, printed the book, and it was on stands like so fast. It was crazy. I was like, I just drew this thing, and now it's, I'm going to a comic book store and seeing it on the shelves, But that's how I got my first gig. That's crazy.
And it's what we call here humble beginnings, because I know how I started out doing what I'm doing. It was a slow pace. It was a grinding, going to 4 or 5, 3 conventions a year. Then it turned going to 6 conventions a year. Then it turned to 8 conventions a year. Getting my name known, and keeping consistent, and showing face, and always being professional. And then Now I'm doing stuff like moderating panels for Wizard World online, and it's all about that steady grind that you have to take.
Yeah.
But if you don't stay consistent, you're not going to get those results. So after seeing your work in the comic book store, having come from working in the comic book store, having come from, not thinking you were going to make it and you went ahead and joined the Marines, going back to that 14 to 18 year age gap where you were going to these conventions and showing people your comics, how did you feel at that moment?
I felt elated and pride the minute I got offered a job. But the years of struggle and strife trying to make it, because I could see in my mind that I could do all the comic book work, and I could see that, I could see a level I knew I could get at, but I just wasn't there. And it was just a struggle to be like, like I know I can do this work, but I'm only doing this, and it's like, it's like running a 100-mile, or 100-yard dash, you just add another 0.5 seconds to it every time or something, you just have to keep getting there, but you can do it. You're not capable of it yet. And every time anybody told me, oh, you can't do that, or you can't do this, that just fueled my desire to make it. And even on my first day at Extreme, first week, Rob Liefeld came to my table. I drew some girl or one of his girl characters or something. And he goes, I will never give you a book with a girl in it. Nobody in the business. He's like, you suck at drawing women. Nobody in the business is ever going to give you a book with a girl in it. And I'd never drawn girls. I was like 25. I'd drawn like one for this comic book I published. And, so I published 2 comics. They had girls in it. But nothing ever else I drew. It was always monsters or guys or whatever. Superman or Batman. But I took that as a here's something you can't do. Go make sure you can, So I just started studying that, more focus on that than monsters or whatever, which I could do naturally, So now I draw them pretty good, but that was what was awesome about being in the studio environment was like when I first got there, I was humble as hell, right? I was like, everybody here knows something I don't. So I'm gonna move my table around the entire studio and learn from, move it next to this guy and learn from him as long as he can teach me stuff. Because when I got there, Rob Liefeld, he used to show up in the bullpen and teach the guys or take a special focus on teaching this guy and that guy and that guy and that guy. But when I got there, I got hired at San Diego Con, and 10 other guys got hired right after me. So Rob set up that studio with drawing tables for everybody, brand new tables, pencils, everything. And it was competitive, but it was also a great chance to learn. And the other guys, they were on the same level I was, but some of those guys, they were just like, oh, I draw this face, like one guy was like, I draw this one guy's face and that's all he draws, and it, looked like Mark Silvestri, but he drew it every single day. That's all he would focus on. It's like, well, you're going to get really good at drawing that face, but nothing else. But, and he didn't last long. But, so I went to, Todd's table, and I was like, Rob taught you up until 3 months ago, like right before I got hired. I was like, teach me everything he taught you. And even that first, 2 weeks time I was at Todd's house, he was teaching me stuff all day. And I was like, and he was like, this is everything Rob taught me, And I was like, oh, okay. So I would move my table to the next guy and the next guy, and I would learn from the inkers and the colorists, like the colorists are like, oh, you're drawing in this way, but it makes it hard for the color guys to color. And if you could do it like this, it makes it a little easier. So I'd start adding that to my repertoire, And there's some great artists at Extreme Studios. They've gone on to have big businesses, on their own. And I felt really lucky that I was able to learn from them at an early age when they were like, oh, I have this thing to focus on, or I have this thing to focus on. So I was like, okay, well, teach me what you're focusing on, and I'll just add it to my list of stuff I can do, But I think I benefited from being so humble and not having that. Some guys had that attitude that they're at the top of their game, and they don't have to improve. Not a lot, but some of those guys had that attitude. But I never did. I was like, teach. I would learn from everybody. And some artists, like even now, I hear them say it's like, oh, you can't learn from non-artists. Like if a non-artist critiques your work, just throw it away. That means nothing. But I never took that attitude. And to that point, there was a girl that worked at Extreme Studios, and she was like an accountant or something. She did some filing or something. But she had looked at my work, and she goes like, when women smile, like they only show their top teeth. The bottom teeth of women aren't shown when they're smiling. Guys will show their bottom teeth when they smile, but not women. I was like, what? So I went and looked it up. I was like, oh Jesus. So I, that was another thing I could add to my list. And even like, Rob always drew the monsters with the giant, 100 teeth or whatever. And I was doing that, and they're like, there's only 32 teeth in your head. It's like what? I never thought of that. But it was like from non-artists, but that was stuff that would, they didn't like seeing in comic art or whatever. So they just pointed out, and I was like, I will add that to my list of stuff, So every time I draw, 16 teeth on the top, 16 on the bottom. But
looking at that and looking at the scene of artists and comic books today, how much has it changed since then?
I think it was really good when I started because there were so many studios. There was Chaos Studios, Top Cow Studios, Extreme Studios, Amish Studios. There was continuity. Neil Adams had guys working for him. There's a lot of Adam Hughes had a studio, and Gaijin, right? Like Brian Stelfreeze and a bunch of other guys. I think it was in Atlanta, and there's a lot of studios around the country. Nowadays, I can't think of a bullpen like Antarctic Press. We have a bullpen, where just guys go in and work and stuff. It's diminished now. Like we only have a few people left in it, but back in that was another one in the 90s. Like Antarctic Press, they had a huge bullpen, and for a time it went up and down. But man, having that personal touch of artists teaching you right there on the spot, that's amazing. Flip to today, there's so many young up and coming artists, like even on TikTok, like where we met, some of these young artists, they got like 17 years old, they got 100,000 fans, every time they do something, there's 300,000 people clicking on it or whatever, it's just amazing. And these younger kids are learning so much faster than we could,
Right.
I remember one of my first assignments, at Extreme Studios was drawing Badrock next to like a film projector. And I was like, what the hell does a film projector look like? I had to call it up from memory, and just, this is what I remember from 8th grade, in the 80s, like, when the film guys came in with the trolley and showed, the projector ran. But I was like, where the hell am I going to get that reference? We didn't have Google. I was struggling with a film projector, right? And it's like, it was the stupidest thing, but it took like a day to figure out how to draw one. It's like, I barely remember, But now there's so much reference available. All these, everybody's taking advantage of it. It's just two different ways. I think some of these people could benefit from just the personal touch of how do I do this and get an answer like immediately. Whereas like in my day, like we would benefit from all the modern conveniences, Google and just YouTube, or how do I draw this, or what's a horse look like if it's running and it's sliding? It's like, just go to YouTube and there's a video somewhere of that horse doing that. Right. Even TikTok, I started last year. I started getting a sketchbook and started drawing horses because I never had to draw horses much, and I really want that skill to be able to draw a horse on the spot, Or some of the older guys can do that, no problem, because there used to be a lot of horses in comics. Right. It's just such a one little silly thing, but it's like it's not in my wheelhouse. I don't have it right there on reserve, So I started practicing, but I started following a lot of people on TikTok that had horses and stuff like that, and they were sliding under fences and galloping and jumping up and all this stuff. That's like 100 books of horse reference right there in this 1 minute video. You
Yep.
pause it at any second. It's like, oh, that's what it looks like underneath, or it's crazy time. I'm learning more stuff every single day than I had in like 10, 15 years of working in comics in the 90s. That's really cool.
I want you to tell the story from your perspective, because everybody just heard it from me, of how we met on TikTok, because it still blows my mind to this day, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier about being humble and doing things the right way. So I want the fans to hear from your perspective.
I remember there was this video of this lady that her husband was an artist, and maybe he didn't realize how good he was or whatever, but she printed she took one of his pieces of art and printed it on a blanket and gave it to him as a present, like, showing him, she believed in him. And so she printed this giant blanket, and he was like overwhelmed with it. And that was like when I was right new to TikTok, right? Like I've been on there maybe 6 months just watching. But right around that time, I was really getting into it, and I went to comment on it, and I saw you had left a really nice comment, and I liked your comment, and we started talking. But I just felt that you were so positive and upbeat about that moment, and where a lot of people could just be like, oh, you printed this blanket or whatever, But you didn't do that, man. You were just like, supportive and just giving a lot of love, and I really like that, and we started talking. But that's one thing I look for today, even on TikTok, is just people that are so positive and upbeat, and even yesterday there was another guy on TikTok, Max Devlin. He does a lot of puppetry and stuff, but he complimented this one guy. He had this long flowing hair or whatever. And he complimented him. He got like 100,000 views or something, right? But he started yesterday just saying, "I'm just gonna give positive, because men never get compliments or whatever, And he's like, "I'm just gonna be more positive to men, men supporting men. Let's see what that does to change the world or whatever,
Absolutely, and that's something I appreciate. That's something that I try to instill in people that I connect with. Like, reciprocation is key. I work
Absolutely.
with people to reciprocate, because it's a healthy relationship. And with that, you were like, I'm gonna send you some books. I'm like, okay, he's gonna send me some books.
I forgot to add that part. Oh my God.
A 22-pound box of books, as you guys see the camera shake. That leads me into us talking about Antarctic Press. How did you get started with Antarctic Press?
Well, in the 90s, I was at Extreme Studios maybe a year and a half or so. I left Extreme Studios and I went back home to Dallas. And that was right before like Extreme Studios started collapsing. All the mid 90s image collapsed. Extreme got turned into Awesome and Maximum or something else. There was another name for a while, Arcade maybe. But it felt like my time to go. And some of the other artists there, they had left for animation right at the beginning of an animation boom. So I left. I went home, and there was some convention at a small town south of Fort Worth called Cleburne. And I went there, and there was Antarctic Press guys, and there was Chaos Comics. And I got to meet Brian Denham, and I got to meet a bunch of the Antarctic Press guys. And so after I left the Extreme Studios and I moved there, I remembered that some of the one of the other coworkers at this comic book store I worked at, he was really big into this Antarctic Press book called Twilight X. Anyway, the creator of that was there, and I just started freaking out over his book because it was such an awesome book. And but both Antarctic Press and Chaos were like, "Oh, we'd love for you to do some stuff for us," Brian Polito said, draw a couple of pinups by Monday, and they better knock my socks off. And if they do, I'll give you work. If they don't, we'll just go our separate ways. I was like, okay. So I did some stuff for Brian Polito. sent it to him on Monday. Antarctic Press called and they said, "Come down here. We just want to, hang out and let you look at our studio." And I did that. So I got some work from Chaos. Antarctic Press. I just drove down there just for a little day trip or whatever, and checked out the studio. That was when, man, that studio was packed at that time. There was a lot of guys there, and they even had cleaning service. They had insurance. They were popping. Because they were doing really good with Warrior Nun and all that stuff. But they had asked if, after I left, if I wanted to draw Warrior Nun, because they wanted a new look on Warrior Nun separate from Ben's manga style. Ben Dunn, the creator of Warrior Nun. They wanted a more
Let me ask a question
look.
about that. Is that the same Warrior Nun that's on Netflix right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Ben sold Warrior Nun just a couple of years ago, and to another company called Avatar, and they got the TV show with Netflix and all that stuff. But so I came, they invited me back down, and they said they'd put me up in a hotel for a month, and they put me up in this hotel with Kelsey Shannon, because they had also offered him, because he was a young up-and-coming artist, and he was an inker, and so they put us up in a room, and we became best friends, and we'd go to work every day at the same time, come back to the hotel, and it's just a little hotel, 2 beds and a TV, but we would just work, and we decided to move to San Antonio and start working. That's how I got started at Antarctic Press, and since then I've left and gone to work at Top Cow and other companies, DC, Marvel, and all that stuff. But I always do stuff for Antarctic anytime they'd ever call. Sometimes they'd call and, hey, we're putting a book in the ads tomorrow to solicit for a few months down the road. Can you come up with a cover? Can you, they were going to do a book about the Alamo, but they didn't have a really powerful cover. And they called me. I was in San Diego at the time, and I did a cover. I faxed it to them or whatever. Scanned it, sent it to them, and they colored it, and it was in the ad, like that next morning. It's so fast. Another one was Time Lincoln, this book about time traveling Lincoln. And they called up, and I gave them like a tagline for it, which was like, in his final hour, he lived a lifetime. I did a logo and a cover. It was all within 4 or 5 hours. And I sent it to them. They colored it, and in the morning, they put it in an ad, and it was in the, they put it in an ad for Diamond, Diamond distributor. But it was always like, they were always calling up and asking if I'd do stuff. But they told me from like 1997, if you ever want to do anything the rest of your life, we will publish it. Like, you don't even have to pitch anything to us. Which was a relief, knowing that there's that outlet there, So about 10 years ago, I moved down here and just started becoming more a part of the studio, And just a couple of years ago, I became editor-in-chief. And now I do the Diamond ads. I have to do Diamond ads by Wednesday. It takes a couple of days to do them. But I do logos for them, all these different books. Sometimes I do covers. Like right now, we're soliciting for March, and we're doing a Kamala Harris coloring book. So I have to do a cover for that in the next couple of days. But it's really cool, just whatever we can come up with to put out a book on.
Absolutely. What would you say is the most favorite thing that you have drawn?
For me personally, I did a short stint on Angel, the Buffy character. I really liked that character. I really liked that book. I think I was firing on all cylinders at that time. About that same time, I did Iron Man Hypervelocity from Marvel, and although I believe that was probably one of my best works, it was based on the layouts of Adam Warren, so I still feel like it wasn't all me, it was me doing him, but in a realistic way, which was a dream come true, because when I was starting out trying to get into comics, he was coming out with a Dirty Pair, that manga series from Dark Horse. And I was like, I would love to see an American-style comic book with this level of depth and realism and computer stuff with realistic American-style people, So when Iron Man Hypervelocity came along, that was exactly what they wanted, It was like a realistic look at, like Adam Warren's art, but realistic people running around. And that was what Adam wanted too, so that was a great opportunity, and I really love that book. And also at that same time, I did X-Files, and I really loved working on that. But if you really want a story, my first job at Extreme Studios, I can never live that down. Is Alan Moore wrote my first book, and people tease me all the time. They're like, your first work in comics was written by Alan Moore. You don't deserve that, or whatever. But when I was working at Rob, he told me, "Oh, you suck at drawing women, and we'll only give you a book with monsters in it." And Todd McFarlane came in the studio one day, and he had miniatures of Violator and action figure prototypes of Violator and Spawn, or Violator and Badrock, and he was showing them to Lipo. And Rob came running back in the bullpen, and he's like, "Oh, Denham, I got your book right here. It's Violator versus Badrock. And he's like, "It'd be perfect for it. Just be a big old monster fight." And I was like, "Oh my God, that would be awesome." And he goes, "Who do you want to write it?" And we started looking around like there were writers in the bullpen, And he was thinking I was going to choose one of those guys. And I said, "Alan Moore." He goes, "What?" He goes, "There is no effing way we can get Alan Moore to write your book." I just deadpanned him. I was like, "You're Rob Liefeld. You can do anything."
Right.
He's like, "All right." He's like, F and F, just cuss. He's like, "All right." And he walked out. And like a week later, they had called Alan Moore, got a hold of him, asked him if he wanted to write this book. And he said yes. And the story goes, I don't know if it's true, but he needed beer money or something. And he said he'd write it. And so that was it. I was committed, and Rob came back and told me, "You got your book, Rob, Alan Moore's going to write your book." And again, with Rob, I was trying to play it cool. I was like, "All right." He's like, "How are you not more excited? Jesus Christ, jump out of your skin." I was just like, but man, my heart was just like a cartoon. It was like, dun, dun, dun,
Absolutely. I get like that too when I meet certain celebrities, or when I get certain chances and opportunities in the media and stuff that I do. I stay professional. Like, thank you. I'm very excited for this.
Yeah.
And on the inside, I'm like, it's just like a lot of crazy going on.
Because
go ahead.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you're just like, I'm this little kid that grew up in this little spot, and I had a black and white TV when I was a kid growing up, and I was like, and now I'm meeting like actors and all these things, and it's like, it's unreal. And I'm sure it is for them too sometimes when they meet other people, But sometimes it's like you feel so disconnected from the world, like with the comics or all this other stuff. But then when you meet the people that make them, it's a different. It's like, what,
Absolutely.
And yeah, and it's sometimes you have that level of fame where it's like, there's the quote, fame takes up a room, so like when you meet somebody famous, it's like you can't talk about that part, just talk about them. Hey, what'd you have for lunch,
Right.
Because the fame, they don't want to deal with that either. They just want to be a person.
They just want to have a normal conversation, and that's when I do interviews with a lot of celebrities, when I do go to conventions, which I miss conventions so much.
Yeah.
I tend to ask them questions other than what people already ask them all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a huge Power Ranger fan. I got a story I tell you. I first time I interviewed Jason David Frank. Went to Pensacola, Florida to a convention. Met him there, took pictures with him, the whole shebang. Got back on home and got on Instagram saying, "Man, so awesome, I met the Green Ranger, yada yada yada. Hopefully one day I can interview him on my YouTube channel."
Yeah.
A couple of days later, I'm at work. My phone in my pocket is just buzzing. And I'm like, okay, I know people know not to call me while I'm at work. So I finally get a break, check my phone. Everybody's texting me saying, "Go check your Instagram." Check my Instagram. He's reposted my video, tagged me in it, and said, "Of course I'll do an interview with you."
Wow.
So I still have these questions. I got a piece of cardstock paper, wrote these questions down, and I only asked one Power Rangers question because he has he owns karate studios.
Oh yeah, he's got a lot more going on than just Power Rangers.
It's just more than Power Rangers, and he's big on his faith. So that was one of my first questions, and normally when you see other interviews where they just stick to the nerd stuff and the stuff that I always ask, the interviews are quick.
Yeah.
We were on the phone for about 40 minutes.
That's awesome.
It was about 40 almost minutes to an hour. And I was just sitting in my living room like this is happening.
Yeah, so this ain't real.
You have to, it's really surreal. You have to step outside of yourself sometimes. Like even yesterday, I moderated the Power Rangers villains panel for Wizard World.
Nice.
And looking at 8 of the Power Rangers villains in this room right here on my computer.
They could destroy the world.
And I'm just like, hey, how you guys doing? I'm here. Trying to keep the composure, because at the bottom of my screen is Paul Freeman, who played Ivan Ooze, and I'm just like, okay, how you guys doing? I'm here, so I'm spazzing on the inside, but I'm being professional on the outside. Yeah. Everybody started laughing. But you've been saying a lot of terms, and one thing you continued to say was when you met somebody new with a new company or a new studio, they ask you to do some pinups. What's a pinup?
Well, a pinup would be like a one-page. Here I have this. I have a book here. It's like if like here's my Barack Panther comic book, but like a pinup would just be like one image right there on one page, of a character.
Okay.
It's like a cover.
Like, draw me this character.
Yeah, it's like the cover without the logo or whatever.
Right.
And usually you just try to capture the essence of that character in that one shot. Like if it's Mr. Fantastic from the Fantastic Four, you draw him stretching. Human Torch, you draw him with his fire going, or right. Something. Maybe you drew Susan Storm either kicking ass with her bubbles, invisible bubbles, or right. Playing with her kids, or bringing, Reed Richards some piece of equipment he needs for something. The other day I did a pinup of it was a pinup of Galactus. That was a request, and I was gonna do like a realistic shot of Galactus, but I was like, I did a chibi shot, which is like the big heads on a little body, the cartoony look. Because sometimes you can just boil it down to the essence of that character in a cartoony look. So I drew Galactus sitting at a table in one of his heralds, the people that go and finding planets to eat, this herald, Nova, a girl, she was like handing him the earth and the moon, and he's like all happy because he's about to eat, which now I'm thinking I should have drew a bib on him or something. But that would be a pinup. It's like it just to boil down that character to what's essential about them. I did one of the Daredevil years ago. Like they asked to draw like a cartoony chibi kind of picture of Daredevil, and I drew him like helping an old lady across the street. So he's walking with his cane, and there's like the blind leading the blind because she couldn't see, right. and he can't see. But it's like it's a cute moment, but it's also like that's that character right there. He's blind, but he's still helping. He's doing everything he can to help.
Exactly. Now, one last thing I want to ask you that we always ask here is, what do you think about the word consistency?
I think that's pretty much one of the best things you can be and do as an artist or any kind of professional. Show up, stay present in the moment, do what you're supposed to do. I know I've had a lot of problems with it over the years. I know sometimes that consistency may not be looking the same from when your career began to when it ends, because that means that there's no growth and there's no learning and improvement. So consistency also, if you're posting every day or if you're drawing every day, with that consistency, you're going to get better, and you're not going to look like the same you did even just a year ago. Even doing your videos, a year into your videos, you're not going to do a video like you did the first time.
Correct.
And I think that's one of the greatest things people can have, and I struggle with it. I need to do it more, like posting every day or whatever, more frequently, have more of a presence. But so that's something I'm going to try to do more in the next, in the coming years, as I enter my twilight phase or whatever in my life. But because like for a long time I was like, I'm just going to prove on my own and and then I'll pop off in a year with a new look, you know. But that's not what people want, and I've learned that now. And a lot of this stuff with TikTok and this younger generation, they're letting you see with their consistency, they're letting you see the growth, and that is more valuable, you know, to this next generation and the next generation behind them of people coming up. Is
Right.
if they can see that growth, they know they can do it, you know.
Right.
But you know, if I'm just coming out with a book every 2 years and it's like, oh, I'm better than I was the last time you saw me, that's like that's not either helpful, and it's not honest. I think.
Absolutely. Well, Brian, I want to thank you, man, for coming on and talking with us. One more thing, that
Thank you.
Barack Panther book, I saw that in the comic book store maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I might be stretching it a little bit, but it's been about that long.
Yeah, it's been a while.
What was the year on that?
I mean, like 2015 maybe, but
Okay. I remember when it was first coming out.
get my glasses.
There's a comic book store here in the area I used to go to, and
2018.
2018. Okay, that sounds about right. That sounds about right. And the guy at the front desk told me, he said, "Yeah, I got this new book coming in." They showed me the picture. I was like, "Oh man, I got to get that." But I never got around. I can't remember if they actually got any in the store, and did I get a chance to get it. So it's funny that years later, that book I really wanted, I'm sitting here now talking to you.
Oh man, that's a funny story too. Just coming up with that, you know, I think we came up with it, of course, when the movie came out, you know,
Right.
And most things at Antarctic, you know, it just comes up with a joke, but it's too funny to let go, you know, like the
Right.
time link, and like Fred Perry, who does Gold Digger, he was talking about. He said something about Lincoln, but he said it as Time Lincoln, and then everybody's laughing. It's like, that'd be a funny story, and it's like, hey, let's do it as a comic book, and now we've done like 6 or 7 comic books of it or whatever, where Lincoln travels and meets all the different presidents. But even the Barack Panther, you know, it's like, oh, we're talking about Black Panther, and somebody said a Barack Panther or something, but I'm like, let's do that as a book. And
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
even
Brian, I want you to tell everybody where they can find you at.
I'm on TikTok at Brian Denham Comics. I'm on Instagram at Brian.Denham. And I'm on Twitter at Brian Denham. I'm on Facebook at Brian Denham. And, you know, Antarctic Press is antarctic-press.com.
Absolutely. You guys
We have more cool stuff coming.
make sure you guys check Brian out and all of their stuff that they got coming from Antarctic Press. And you guys know where you can find us. We're all over social media. It's Families Anonymous. We're having a great time. We're starting to get back more consistent with making videos.
Oh, great.
I've been off for a minute.
I should let you call everybody else in our studio. There's a lot of guys there.
Definitely, man. I'd love to do that if we get like a group video or something and really pick their brains. But Brian, again, thank you for coming on with us, and we'll see
Thank
you
you.
guys in another video.
Bye-bye.